Royal Highness, Professor Ian Hacking, Minister, guests and friends from Norway and abroad. The Ludvig Holberg Memorial Prize is awarded to scholars for outstanding scientific work in humanities, social sciences, law and theology. The prize shall, according to the statutes, contribute to raise the status of these disciplines in society and to stimulate children and young people to develop an interest in these fields. The award decision is made by the board of the Holberg Memorial Fund on the basis of a recommendation from the Holberg Committee, which is composed of outstanding international researchers from the relevant academic fields. In its recommendation to the board, the Holberg Committee observes that Hacking's combination of rigorous philosophical and historical analysis has profoundly altered our understanding of the ways in which key concepts emerge through scientific practices and in specific social and institutional context, and that his work lays bare the normative and social implications of the natural and the social sciences. The committee then first mentions Hacking's work on the use of probability theory in contemporary statistics and notes that no scholar has made a more substantial contribution to our comprehension of the emergence of probability as a fundamental concept in both theory and practice in the modern world. The committee also points to Hacking's studies of the significance of the scholar's development of new ways of classifying human beings in order to handle the flood of numbers, and thereby constructing new kinds of people. Hacking has, says the committee, throughout his career addressed the central philosophical question of scientific realism, whether the theoretical entities postulated by the sciences, from electron to multiple personality disorder, are real in the same way as everyday objects. He argues that to decide whether concepts in the physical sciences should be understood realistically, we must see how they are used to intervene in the world through experiments. The Social Construction Award from 1999 brought his interest in realism about natural kinds, together with his work on human kinds, radically redefining the issues at stake in the controversies about social construction. Hacking's recent works ranges across topics such as obesity, race and autism, as he continues to address the problem of humankind. Ian Hacking's work, the Holberg Committee concludes, reverberates throughout the humanities and social sciences, reframing our understanding of the interactions between the natural and the social worlds. So far, the Holberg Committee. This year's Holberg Prize goes to a scholar who has analyzed the methods and shaping of concepts in a historical, science, sociology and normative perspective. Scientific concepts and methods are not absolute entities which may be identified in a pre-existing universal order. They are tools for human thought and discourse, tools which may lead to new insights, but which may also restrict our thinking. To a considerable degree, the development of science depends on our ability to put established concepts and thought patterns in a critical light. In order to do this, we need an insight into the historical background for the way we think about and describe different phenomena and the underlying values expressed in our thinking. And we need an understanding of the nature of science which goes across the boundaries between the different scientific and scholarly disciplines. Ian Hacking's research goes beyond and has given important contributions to the foundational discourse within the individual disciplines, as well as in the general theory of science. It thus fulfills one of the main ambitions of the Holberg Prize, to draw attention to research which transcends the limits between and ties together insights from different disciplines. The Ludwig Holberg Memorial Board is happy and proud to include Ian Hacking in a group of Holberg laureates. I now have the pleasure and honor of asking Her Royal Highness Crown Princess Mette-Marit and the Holberg laureate Ian Hacking to approach the podium where Ian Hacking will receive this year's Holberg Prize and the Holberg Medal.
Your Royal Highness, Minister, Your Excellency, members of the Ludwig Holberg Memorial Fund committees, Dr. David Bloch, and guests. It's been the custom in past years for the winner of the Holberg Prize to express in a few words thanks and respectful comments on the prize, the organizer, and Baron Holberg. This year, I've been asked for a slightly longer talk on some theme of present work or scientific research. But I cannot omit the thanks. I would like to speak for the entire triad of prizes. The most important is the most junior, the event I attended this morning, the research competition for senior students in secondary schools. Those who have competed, and the three groups who have won, are the future. It was a brilliant idea to include young people in the structure of the Holberg Prize, and I am going to propose a similar revision in a certain similar prize in Canada. Next most important is the Niels Klim Prize for young Nordic researchers. These are the nearer future. Such a prize can make a real contribution to the winner, both financially and in terms of international recognition. The least important is the Senior Award, for no matter how active we old men and women continue to be, we have done most of our life's work. I am, of course, grateful for the largesse, but sad, too. I get a serious 15 minutes of fame, which I would not have had without a large cash reward. I best liked the headline in the conservative London newspaper, the Daily Telegraph. Canadian philosopher wins 500,000 euros and buys new sheets. It's a shame there cannot be extended public recognition for a humanist unless there is a lot of money involved. Money is not to be despised, however. Like many other winners of large prizes, my wife and I will give a lot of it away. We were struck that our own choice of beneficiaries, aside from contributions to educational institutions, is remarkably similar to some of those listed for the Crown Prince and Crown Princess's Humanitarian Fund. Now for a theme of current research. The best three-sentence summary of my life, intellectual and other, is I am curious. Not meaning, but not altogether excluding, the sense of the famous 1967-68 Swedish soft porn films, I Am Curious Yellow and I Am Curious Blue. My curiosity gets me into a lot of trouble, not the least of which is that I follow up more different types of research than I have time and energy to devote to them. The Holberg Symposium yesterday was about social questions mostly, in particular ideas about social construction, making up people, and the looping effects of classification. But the issue I find most pressing right now is curiosity about curiosity itself. There is a wonderful children's story called Me by the American Marxist novelist William Saroyan. In the beginning, there was only one word, me. People went around saying, me, 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 and nothing else. But then they discovered you. And if there could be two, there could be more. Yes and no, yes and no, green and blue. And then Saroyan tells us people started finding out. On the last page of this beautiful book, they are still finding out. Yes, we are. The fable teaches us we had to find out how to find out. That is a series of cultural discoveries in historical time. But it is not only the history of civilizations. People had to have various sorts of latent abilities that they learned how to use. Finding out how to find out is an intricate interplay between innate faculties and human history. It has had more impact on our planet than anything else that we as a species have done. We have found out how to do innumerable things, how to sculpt the human body in marble, how to paint it in oils, and we are finding out how to modify its genome. We not only find out how to do, but also what is true. We have found out endless facts in love and, alas, in war, but it is finding out in the sciences that has made our species dominant, perhaps too dominant. A philosophical anthropology of the sciences is an inquiry into those aspects of human nature that have changed the face of the earth and all that dwells therein. All finding out is particular, but there are a few broad lines to draw. I call them styles of scientific thinking. I adapted the label from an Australian historian of the sciences, the late Alistair Crombie. I turned his historical anthropology of scientific reason into a philosophical one. Crombie distinguished some 6 fundamentally different methods of argument that have evolved in what he called the European tradition, but which have become part of the human heritage, and whose epicenter today might well be the brand new metropolis of Shenzhen in the south of China, adjacent to Hong Kong. Or is it Bangalore in India? But the originating cultural history of what we call the sciences evolved in the Mediterranean and then in Europe. The first style to flourish, as Kant well saw, was mathematics. He had a magical passage in the 2nd edition of his Critique of Pure Reason where he speaks of a revolution. He says, "A new light flashed upon the mind of the first man, be he Thales or some other, who demonstrated the properties of the isosceles triangle." Now, of course, it's not a single man, but a tiny community, and we would now say Eudoxus rather than Thales. But in the course of about 80 years, a small group of eccentrics discovered mathematical demonstration, an entirely new way to find out. And we have gone on finding out that way. Proof ideas and techniques of proof continue to be an evolving part of social history. Crombie's next 2 styles of scientific thinking are, using his labels, hypothetical modeling of the world, an ancient technique that crystallized with Galileo, and experimental exploration, even more antique and universal. The really decisive conceptual step which enabled the so-called scientific revolution to take off in the 17th century was the merging of both into the laboratory style. Once again, Kant spoke of the sudden outcome of an intellectual revolution. He singled out Galileo on the one hand and Torricelli on the other. Theory and exploration had, however, to combine in order to change the world. I use Robert Boyle and his air pump as an emblem of a new crystallization into the laboratory style. At its core is the building of apparatus, not only to probe the world, but also to create new phenomena by means of which to understand it. Crombie has three more styles, of which I shall mention only the fourth, the taxonomic style, found in all cultures, but crystallizing in the Nordic world in the work of Linnaeus. It is the philosophical twists that intrigue me. I start with erudite versions of popular history, but canonical historical events get new meanings, crystallization and so on. There must also be a cognitive side of the story, although at the moment it is more a priori than well understood empirical fact. One school of cognitive science uses a modular approach. It holds, for example, that there is a universal structure to the ways in which human beings the world over classify living things. The taxonomic style of thinking developed by or crystallized by Linnaeus builds on that. In truth, I am not much of a modularist, but one can see each style of thinking as deploying a specific group of human abilities that have to be uncovered and cultivated. When a new light flashed on Thales, Eudoxus, and their colleagues, something in the human mind clicked, the realization of a potential already there. Within a few years, there was a prodigious upwelling of geometrical activity. The Israeli historian of mathematics, Ravil Netz, has made a marvelous start on that cognitive history, as he calls it. But let us not overemphasize cognition. The laboratory style demands not only cognitive skills of modeling and exploration, but also finding out how to do things with the human body, hands and eye. It is an embodied art. A more purely philosophical twist has to do with truth itself. The styles of scientific thinking are not ways of finding out truths that are already there waiting to be discovered. The styles are self-authenticating in that they generate new criteria for what is true. This is not some kind of relativism. It is an explanation of where our sense of objectivity comes from. It may sound a wild historicism, Hegel gone mad, but it is close to the verification principle of the Vienna Circle positivists. I shall stop there at a tantalizing beginning. We are now in the heartland of philosophy. We are in Kant land, yes, but I see it as the home of the philosopher of the modern epoch who had the greatest curiosity, namely Leibniz, born just 38 years before Ludwig Holberg. Leibniz is my role model, curious about everything, including curiosity itself. I am encouraged by the Holberg Prize to carry on with these reflections on scientific reason and perhaps to bring them to fruition in the nearest future. So once again, I express my thanks.